Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time, and in this video I'll share House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's latest comments about the status of the negotiations. She said, and I quote, "We will come to an agreement because we must." She said this in an interview with the Washington Post late last night, and I'll actually show you a clip of that video. But in addition, I do want us to manage our expectations because the House Speaker also discussed her positions on unemployment benefit extensions and whether she would be open to a piecemeal approach towards the unemployment benefit extensions, because the House is going to meet this Saturday for a vote. She's not open to a piecemeal approach. So we have to wait and see how things turn out and how things pan out between the two sides. But according to an article on The Hill, which you can see on your screen right now, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected a push by some House Democrats to vote this weekend on a standalone, on a piecemeal legislation to extend federal unemployment benefits that expire at the end of July. And she said that it would undermine their negotiating position on other aspects of the pandemic relief package, because what the Democrats are shooting for is a big comprehensive bill that includes funding for state and local, amongst many other things, amongst the extension of the federal unemployment benefits all the way through January of next year, which is something that the Republicans are not willing to offer. As you probably know by now, more than 100 Democrats this week signed a letter, and they urged House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to schedule a vote on Saturday on legislation to extend enhanced unemployment benefits based on the level of unemployment in a particular state. That's what's called as the automatic stabilizer method. And this is something I've actually covered in a previous training video. So you want to check out my previous video on the channel as well. Now, the House Speaker did say that she personally supported the idea of tying unemployment benefits to economic measures like the unemployment rate, instead of allowing the benefits to expire at a certain set period in time. But she did argue that voting on such a proposal at this stage could ultimately backfire in the negotiations. She said on PBS NewsHour, I quote, "That's a very positive initiative. I have encouraged that. I have welcomed that suggestion. I don't think strategically it's where we should go right now, because the Republicans would like to pass something like that and say, forget about it." That is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's position. She said that they would want to, and I quote, "forget about state and local government funding, forget about our investments in stopping the pandemic, forget about other initiatives that feed the food insecure children in our country, vote by mail initiatives, and the rest." The House Speaker also warned that the House, if the House was to pass a standalone bill on extending unemployment insurance, Senate Republicans could amend it and add, I quote, "poison pills." So as far as trying to reach a stimulus negotiation, some sort of an agreement with the Republicans, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, "I don't think it's done by giving them an out. I think it's done by making them come into the negotiation." She's a tough negotiator, Speaker Pelosi. Now, the Speaker did acknowledge that, I quote, "the ideas members have put forth have been excellent," but she said, I quote, "however, we must consider their timing and strategic value. They cannot come at the expense at addressing the priorities of the HEROES Act, particularly support for our heroes in state and local government and education who are in crisis." That's what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said. She was referring to the $3 trillion HEROES Act that was passed in May of this year, which didn't go anywhere in the Senate because, in the words of the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, it was dead on arrival in the Senate. So it's clear that there's both an ideological divide and a political divide between the administration and the Democrats. In fact, the House Speaker specifically said so. When she was interviewed yesterday by the Washington Post, she specifically mentioned and outlined her position and how her position and the Democrats' position differed significantly from that of the administration. She said, and I quote, "We put forth our proposal 97 days ago, the HEROES Act, and it did three things. It honored our heroes." And she talked about healthcare workers who are first responders, which is true, our transportation, our sanitation, our food suppliers, teachers, and she emphasized teachers and children. She said, secondly, it was to open up the economy by crushing the pandemic. And she said all these provisions were in our legislation. The Speaker talked about testing and tracing, about the importance of washing your hands. And the one thing that jumped out at me was the Speaker said that we put forth our HEROES Act, our proposal, 97 days ago. And she said said that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell simply wanted to hit the pause button. And she said, and I quote, he forgot to tell the illness, he forgot to tell unemployment, he forgot to tell the person collecting rent that there was a pause. So basically what the House Speaker is saying is that the Senate Majority Leader wanted to put a pause and watch how the economy recovered. But guess what? She didn't agree with that philosophy, and she said that we should have done something a while back. So it's important to understand the fundamental, the ideological differences between the two sides before we get into the actual comment from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, which I think shows, which I think is a clear indication that something is about to happen, because one side does indeed have to budge. But it does seem that the House Speaker is relatively firm, but also at the same time she's open to some sort of a negotiation as long as somebody gives, as long as somebody budges. Let's watch this clip with the House Speaker and we'll see exactly what the House Speaker explained in terms of the differences in ideologies between the two sides. Let's roll the tape.
And Congress and the House and the Senate and the White House, you all seem kind of stuck here. What are the hopes of actually getting some kind of relief out of Washington that Americans across the country right now really, really need?
Well, we put forth our proposal 97 days ago, the HEROES Act. It did three things: heroes, honor our heroes, our healthcare workers, our first responders, our transportation, our sanitation, our food suppliers, our teachers. Secondly, it was to open up our economy by crushing the virus, being able to open our economy safely and send our children to school safely. Those provisions are in our legislation. Third, putting money into the pockets of the American people. 97 days ago. There are only 75 days until the election, so we're farther away from when our bill went forward. About a few weeks ago, the Republicans, Mitch McConnell said, we have to press the pause button. He forgot to tell the virus. He forgot to tell unemployment. He forgot to tell the person collecting rent that there was a pause. And what happened in that time? Millions more people have become infected. Tens of thousands more have died because he pressed the pause button. Could we have saved them all? No, but many, yes. So we have there the essence of it, and we don't necessarily have shared values with the Republicans. They don't want to let the states go bankrupt. What did the president say? Testing is irrelevant. Tracing, they say, is not that important, but that's not what the scientists tell us. So we need a science-based testing, treating, mask wearing, distancing, sanitation. Wash your hands. Not like Pontius Pilate, as they are doing, but wash your hands to protect yourselves and your families and those with whom you come in contact. So there's a path. And of course, in it, we say we're there to protect the lives, the livelihood, and the life of our democracy. And in there, we have the funding for voting in a safe way. We have our funding for the post office, which they have resisted. And we have funding for food, which is a big difference between what we have. Well, you be the judge. We have over $60 billion to address the food insecurity, especially among our children. Over $60 billion. They have $250,000. So you know why we have a big distance. But we will find agreement because we must. And we must do it in a way that, again, crushes the virus, honors our heroes, puts money in the pockets of the American people, keeps our democracy healthy, and again, protects our postal system.
Now, the next segment is also extremely important because the House Speaker said something that I thought was very crucial. She said, we will come to an agreement because we must. But she did spend a significant amount of time explaining the ideological differences, explaining how the two sides are far apart. And I do think it's important to understand that. I do think it's important to look at both sides of an argument because there are always two sides to every story. The House Speaker, when she was specifically asked, hey, have you talked to Mitch McConnell? She said that the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is not involved in the negotiations. He specifically said, I'm going to do whatever the president asked me to do. And I've explained this on my channel in the past. The administration, the lead negotiators on behalf of the White House, which is U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, once they come to a consensus with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, then at that point in time, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said that he'll support whatever they decide. And she said, again, that's good for our economy. She's referring to her policy. She says, we spend trillions of dollars supporting the stock market, but we need to spend trillions of dollars to support working families as well. She did say that the stock market which was, everybody would be happy with a high stock market, but she said the working man shouldn't be forgotten. And she said, I quote, and that's why we have a difference of priorities here, but we will come to an agreement because we must. And she said, although we don't agree, we don't subscribe, those were her words, to what Mitch McConnell said. She said that Senator Mitch McConnell said, let state and local governments go bankrupt. And she said that if they go bankrupt, then the healthcare workers will go on unemployment insurance, which will cause a ripple effect across the economy, including the private sector. So basically, she's saying that we cannot, under any circumstances, allow states to go bankrupt. And she said that this should be about trying to help all the states, because we should come together and help state and local governments. And she said Democrats and Republicans should be advocating for state and local government, because that's where the delivery of services to the American people. And she said, I quote, that advocacy will bear fruit. I'm absolutely certain. Let's watch the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in this important segment.
Are you talking to Mitch McConnell? How long has it been since you've talked to the president on all of this? How does this get unstuck?
Never told him. I never told him about this. He has sent his representatives, and if he trusts them, that they represent him, then that's who we negotiate with. Mitch McConnell has been very clear to me. I'm not doing anything that the president doesn't want. And what the president wants is the stock market to succeed, as we all do. And that's why they're spending trillions of dollars to shore up the money markets, the credit markets, and all, so that the stock market thrives. And again, that's good for our economy. But we think trillions of dollars should be spent to buoy up America's working families as well. And that's why we have a difference of priorities here. But we will come to agreement because we must. And we do not agree, subscribe to what Mitch McConnell says, let state and local governments go bankrupt. Go bankrupt. Healthcare workers, I mentioned them. And if they get fired, they go on unemployment insurance. When they get fired, not only do they lose their jobs in the public sector, the private sector loses jobs too in the communities in which they live. So let's listen to some of the economists and even the chairman of the Fed. Chairman of the Fed that practically wanted to introduce Congress to state and local government, whose fiscal soundness is important to the economic soundness of our country. But they let the states go bankrupt. Really? But that's one of the differences between Democrats and Republicans. But in the Congress, in the country, Democrats and Republicans are advocating for funding for state and local government, because they know that's where the delivery of service is to the American people. And again, that advocacy will bear fruit, I'm absolutely certain.
Now, this third segment of the interview with House Speaker Pelosi was also extremely telling, because the House Speaker was specifically asked, hey, the differences between the two sides, are they ideological or are they political? And I thought that the response from the House Speaker was extremely interesting, because she said, I quote, for the president, it's political. The president doesn't even try and hide it. And she said, ideologically, when I asked the U.S. Treasury Secretary, hey, why is it that we can't come to a consensus? The Treasury Secretary told her that this is kind of a taxation issue, I quote. And she asked him, what do you mean by taxation issue? And he said that there are some people, this is the U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, he said there are some people in some states who don't think they should be taxed and pay money for the needs of other states. And then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi basically said, look, we are the United States of America. And as far as I'm concerned, this is my comment. We're not the red and the blue states of America. We are the United States of America. I've always said this on my channel. For me personally, it's not about the red or the blue. It's about the red, white, and blue. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm American. That's my point of view. And I believe that's what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was alluding to as well. She made references to Katrina, and she made references to Sandy and other problems we've had in the past where we came together as a country. And she said that some states like New York and California actually put more money into the Treasury than they take out. And she said that there is no validity to the position that, you don't want to bail out badly managed blue states. That was her position. Very important response, and very important ideological difference and political difference between both sides. Let's listen and let's watch what the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had to say.
Do you think there's an element here of the president wanting to punish cities because they're primarily Democratic or blue states? That, I mean, is this an ideological issue with the president and with the Senate Majority Leader, or is it a political issue?
Well, I think it's both. I think the president is political. I mean, he doesn't even keep it a secret. He is blatant in saying that he's not going to be bailing out blue states or whatever. However, It's interesting that you asked the question in the way you did, political ideological, because when I asked the Secretary of the Treasury, why is it that you will not support state and local government? How come you don't understand the strength of that to our communities? Democratic and Republican governors, mayors, county executives, etc., are urging us to support the state and local government. He said, and finally one day he said, well, it's kind of a taxation issue. I said, a taxation issue? Why is that? He said, well, there's some people in some states who don't think that they should be taxed and pay money to pay for needs in other states. Oh, really? Welcome to the United States of America. Have you ever heard of Katrina, Ike, Maria, storms in North Carolina, Mr. Meadows, Joplin, Missouri, other places around, Sandy? Of course, Meadows didn't vote for Sandy, so that shows you where they're coming from. But the very idea that they would suggest states like California and New York, which put much more money into the Treasury than we get out, and they're saying states don't think they should help. Well, let me say, whatever, shall we say, lack of validity that may have had, when you're talking about a pandemic, it knows no borders. So it is even less sensible, sane, and American.
One of the comments she made at the end was very telling. She said, when you're talking about a pandemic, it knows no borders. That's it, everybody. That was the entire analysis of House Speaker Pelosi's rationale, her thinking, her approach towards these entire stimulus negotiations. She is quite a tough negotiator. She's standing firm with her requirement for the $2.4 trillion, which is, in her words, in the Democrats' point of view, it is $1 trillion less than what they had originally requested with the HEROES Act. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you agree with Speaker Pelosi's position, or do you feel that Speaker Pelosi is asking for too much money? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to interact and engage with the community, because at this point in time, it looks like Speaker Pelosi is standing firm. She does not want to discuss a piecemeal approach, despite the pressure she's facing internally from several Democrats within her own party. And she's firm about the ideological differences that exist between the two sides. Yet at the same time, she said, we have to come to an agreement because we must. But she continues to highlight the ideological differences which do exist between the two parties, which is why we find ourselves in this gridlock. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I do want to see what you have to say. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda. If you don't know anything about me, you can check out my introduction. I have the privilege, the honor of living the American dream, and I would love to be able to help you reach your American dream as well. We release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. If you learned something new from this video, please consider clicking like below. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm. It helps me personally as well. Also, please subscribe and please enable notifications so you get instant updates from us going forward. Now, speaking of updates, if you get your cell phone out and send a text message with the word ignition or with the word time to 70,000, that's 70000, you can get added to our SMS alerts list. You can also get added to our email list, and you can opt out at any time you want. Again, we release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. I really look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.